What's going on, guys? Who's Train Joker Sneaker Principal, and welcome to this episode of the Sneaker Principal podcast. Um, First off, I want to thank everybody who's been joining me on this journey, this insane journey of recording content every single day, all the way through um, June 30th, to commemorate my 20th year in New York City as an educator. Um, it's not easy. I often find myself, like right before I hit record, trying to figure out what to say. And by the times I do know what I want to say, it's pretty simple. But yeah, this has been interesting. It's been pretty fun. I would challenge anyone out there to try this, because it also makes you more comfortable in with speaking in front of a camera and not being so self-conscious. At this point in time, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but this I've never done for this many days straight, for this many posts straight. So far so good. Um, Today I want to talk to you briefly about something that came up during a meeting today that I think is something that needs to be really paid attention to. Um, I am a U.S. citizen. I was not born here. I am from the mighty nation of Nigeria, the African giant. Came here in the 80s with my parents, who came here legally with a visa, but then overstayed and sought through legal means to gain residency and eventually citizenship, um, so that their children would have a better life. The whole entire process itself was arduous because it took many, many years. And there was also many times of just fear and nervousness about being deported and things could happen, and being very careful. My mother would always tell me, and myself and my siblings, remember, we're not from here. You have to be very careful. We're not from here. And I understood what she was saying, because any mistake could lead to us being removed and sent back to Nigeria. But we made it through, and here we are now. My apologies, my ice machine. We made it through, and here we are now. All these years later, we're all citizens. Our children are born citizens, and we serve our country in various ways, from the military to education to the medical field. My family is well grounded in this country. But it doesn't change the fact that me as an educator, with what's happening right now, that it doesn't change the fact that I am feeling a certain level of anxiety. And I know it's not for me. I know it's for my students. But to think about parents being arrested and being deported. And don't get me wrong, I am a believer. If you're here, you're doing craziness, gangs, crimes, stuff like that, you should face the full capacity of the law. But if you're here, even though you might not be documented, but you're here legally working, paying taxes, like a lot of undocumented people do. They do get jobs and they do pay taxes. And I first those people who've been here for 20, 30 years, paid taxes, bought homes, and because they're not documented, they face the risk of being deported. One mistake, one chance encounter can have you deported. It's kind of something. It's kind of stressful to think about, because again, this is something that my family feared for a number of years. But now as an educator, I think about children. I'm here. I'm in this meetings where we're talking about what do we do if ICE comes to your building, immigration. I don't even know what ICE stands for. Immigration, customs. I don't know. But La Migra, immigration. If the immigration police comes to your door, what do you do when they come to the school? And we're being given all these things to do. And across the country, different superintendents are putting out, different school systems are putting out, here's the policy, warrant is required, and this and that and that and that. And I'm okay with that. I know what to do. However, this is my nightmare scenario. Being a child, going on my way home, I get home and no one's there. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. my parents are not home yet, or my parents not home yet. If I'm by myself, what do I do? You know, and that's something that I feel like is not being addressed. And for me, um, we have a number of cell phones that are attached to the schools, work phones that key people on my staff have, and I'm asking them to share that number with students because hey, is this an emergency? Call this number because there's someone on the other end who can actually be like, oh, what, and we can then figure out something to help you. But one of my fear for my students is that something's going to happen. There's going to be a child by themselves, not knowing what to do, who to call. The assumption is that there's an auntie, uncle, someone to call. And I'll be honest with you, when we first came to this country, there was no one to call. It wasn't that easy. Because at least now you have cell phones, but back then there was no cell phones. And as a kid, I didn't have any money. If I was in dire distress and needed help, the only thing I can do is call 911. I wouldn't go to my neighbors. We didn't trust our neighbors. So it's one of those things where it's like, luckily our kids have cell phone numbers, but even just saying, hey, go to the police and the police will ask you who do you want to call. Here's a number you can call. If you can't reach your parents, you can reach the staff member at the school who can then initiate a protocol that comes back to me or it's just the principal or somebody that we can now say, hey, we have a child in distress, regardless of what time it is, this is what we're going to do, to aid that child, that family. But it's something to be fleshed out according to your school community because it's going to happen. And some people might say, what are the chances? But I'd rather not have that be a chance. Because I remember being a child and waiting for my parents to come home and something happened. Maybe they were working late and they couldn't call. So I'm sitting there terrified, thinking my parents are not coming back home because back then there wasn't a way to communicate, those landlines. And there was no guarantee that they would have access to a phone to call me, unlike now where you have cell phones. But something to think about. What happens when something happens with immigration and the child is by themselves and they are minor? I'm talking about middle school age, maybe or older, elementary school age, that age where they're allowed to walk home by themselves and they get home and there's no one there and they have no one else to call. And even they do have someone else to call, is it prudent to say, hey, here's a telephone number, a cell phone number that's linked to the school you can call and somebody will pick up? That's what I'm thinking. But I might be wrong. So call to action. If you think what I'm saying is complete nonsense, is illegal, or is not appropriate, please let me know. What would you do to make sure that every single child in your school building has access to emergency assistance, especially during these times with everything and the concerns with our undocumented families, and in some cases, the person not documented and the kids are documented, or the person not documented, child is undocumented. There's no guarantee that if they're being gathered up, that they'll gather the whole entire family together. And I think one of the worst things that happened during the last, craziness around immigration was the separation of families. I never understood that. And the traumatic effect on that is something that never goes away, I don't think. All right, y'all. Uche and Joker, Sneaker Principal, thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon. Be well.